tiptoe by the garden of a willow tree. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Lady, in flowers we'll stray, we'll keep the showers away. And if I kiss you in the garden, in the moonlight, will you pardon me and tiptoe through the tulips with me?
It's much worse. It's probably tenfold what it used to be. Compared to 20 years ago, you probably have 10 times the number of prescriptions that are written as compared to back then.
Locally, it continues to grow, and nationwide, it continues to grow.
I think when I first started, I was on 20 milligrams in the morning and 20 in the evening. And it worked. It worked.
Since I've been on this new pain medication, I have not missed one day of work, and my boss really appreciates that. Lauren is there every day, so I'm able to be very productive, person again, which is really great.
Eventually, it stopped working, and it got increased. I think it was 40 in the morning and 40 in the evening. And then eventually that got increased. This went on for years. I lost my job and I lost my insurance. So it got to the point where I couldn't afford it, and I didn't buy it one time, and that was the beginning of the end for me, because I could no longer afford it. But the time that I went without it was probably the most unbelievable, excruciating, horrible time of my life. The withdrawals were just unbelievable. I just knew eventually I was, I'd probably kill myself, OD, taking this medicine. I would never take another OxyContin. You couldn't get me to take another OxyContin, never again.
This is Wellspring, a recovery house in Bangor, Maine, for people struggling with substance abuse.
So how many, if we start from this side, have moved from prescription drugs to heroin? Everybody.
And heroin's so much more cheaper.
But it actually, with everyone, started with a prescription from a doctor.
Oh yeah. Coordinates, morphine.
Once people became dependent on painkillers, they said they'd do almost anything to get them.
One time I was hurting so bad that I ended up punching a 4x4 and breaking all 3 of these fingers and this bone to get pain meds from my doctor. I did that several times.
So you'd hurt yourself in order to go to a doctor?
I had 9 teeth pulled out of my head for prescriptions.
At the time, that's how
to get a prescription.
Yeah. I've been with like groups of people where they've taken like bats to their wrists,
broke arms
easily.
I mean, how many people do know someone that's died of overdose from? Everybody.
Prescription painkillers clearly have affected many people, but the danger isn't in abusing the painkillers themselves, it's in the often cause and effect relationship between them and heroin. Opioid medications produce a sense of well-being and pleasure because these drugs affect the brain reward center in the hypothalamus of the limbic system. People who abuse opioids may seek to intensify their euphoric experience by turning to heroin because, as stated by CNN, each is derived from the poppy plant. Their chemical structures are highly similar and they bind to the same group of receptors in the brain. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, the transition is made quicker because heroin is not only similar to opioids in chemical makeup, but it's cheaper and in some communities easier to obtain than prescription opioids.
My name is Dr. Alan Miller. I did my medical school training at the University of Missouri in Kansas City and my internal medicine internship at Emory University. I did a year of anesthesia at Mass General at Harvard Hospital, and I finished my internal medicine training at Emory University affiliated hospitals in 1995. Well, basically, these drugs are overprescribed, and what happens is many patients end up getting put on medications, and they just continue getting them refilled, and the physician refills them, then the nursing staff refills them, and it just becomes a cycle. And many patients don't really need these meds long term. They're really designed for short term. First of all, they become somewhat dependent on the drugs, and it causes another type of medical syndrome in that respect. I mean, they basically become professional patients. They're designed to be short term, but often become long term. In fact, actually, in the practice, I've had patients that have come in who have gone from doctor to doctor, sometimes 4 or 5 doctors in a week to get pain medication prescriptions, and they go to different pharmacies and fill them. In fact, we've had lots of patients that have come just for pain medication only, and they may not even have a real pain problem. They may just like taking them and have a drug addiction issue. They may want to sell them. I can remember one patient who used to always come in with a neck brace, one of those soft collar neck braces, for years because she was saying she was disabled and she had gotten the insurance company to give her disability, and she would get pain medications. And actually then they did an undercover investigation and videotaped her, and she was washing her car, playing frisbee with the dog, out in the yard working, but didn't have her collar on. So it's pretty common to see these kind of scenarios.
Doctors are familiar with how drug abuse starts and with how it escalates. Doctors commonly see professional patients who are known for going from doctor to doctor just to get prescription painkillers. These patients eventually become addicts who are much more likely to use heroin. According to CNN and New York Times, today's typical heroin addict starts using at 23. It is more likely to live in the affluent suburbs and was likely unwittingly led to heroin through painkillers prescribed by his or her doctor. Around 75% of heroin addicts used prescription opioids before turning to heroin. To find out more about this epidemic, we went to the Davis Directional Rehab Facility, the Zone, to speak with a dedicated professional.
Okay, my organization is called the Davis Direction Foundation, and we promote awareness, we promote education, prevention, and we practice harm reduction for the opioid heroin crisis epidemic that we're having today in our country. Well, 85% of all heroin addiction starts because of opioid medication. There's a direct link between taking opioid medication, whether you've gotten it illegally or legally. 9 out of 10 heroin addicts will relapse.
Gosh,
that's why we opened the Zone, because we believe that the Zone it's not really a problem. Anybody can go to detox or rehab and get clean, because there's a program there. Somebody's helping you every single day. But when you leave that network of people where the support is, nobody's helping you, then you lose that process. One, we have to educate people. We have to educate the doctors. We have to educate the pharmacists. We have to educate students. We have to educate parents. Parents are the best advocates for their children, but if they don't go in and question the doctors and why they have to leave with an opioid prescription as opposed to an over-the-counter prescription, there's hope. Recovery happens, and it happens in communities.
It's evident there's a problem in the relationship of painkillers and heroin, but what can be done about it? Well, as Dr. Miller stated, it doesn't take much for a patient to get a prescription of an opioid painkiller, only a visit to a physician and a description of some type of intense pain. In an attempt to solve this problem, the National Institute on Drug Abuse wrote, "Various measures to improve the education of clinicians in pain treatment and opioid prescribing need to be taken. Also, many times doctors prescribe these types of medicine as a first line of defense. There are alternatives according to the NIDA. Particularly, we must push for wider adoption and implementation of existing medication-assisted treatments for opioid addiction to prevent opioid addicts from ever turning to heroin. These alternatives include a combination of over-the-counter pain meds like Tylenol that seem less effective but in reality work just as well as many opioid medications, according to Missy Owen at the Davis Direction Foundation. Educating physicians and doctors on alternatives and methods for prescribing opioid painkillers is vital in fighting the growing heroin epidemic. If we can prescribe less painkillers, fewer people will then become addicted and run to heroin as an alternative."
You should only take one pill if you feel sick. You could at least go to the doctor, or the doctor could give you a pill. Or like if you're feeling sick or you feel like you need to take a pill, you should go to the doctor and ask.